Support for Flying Valiant builds is brought to you by 1st and 64th Customs, where no diecast is safe. Video Geek Productions, all business, all geek. The Brian Smith YouTube channel. Clever schemes for fun and profit. Westlake 164s on Instagram. Quality Customs. A generous grant from the Jonathan Vonesh Foundation, and from support from viewers like you. Please like, share, and subscribe. Alrighty. A Secret Santa project. Which means it's time for a Christmas quickie. Here we go. Hey there folks, Chuck here, and yes, we got another build coming up fast on the tails of the last one. Trying to get a lot more videos made in 2021, and we're off to a great start because both of them so far have been without the important before image of the builds that starts off my episodes. So this was, again, a build I did while I was sick with COVID, so it's amazing that I was able to get anything recorded properly at all. But yeah, some of you might know the name Jonathan Vonesh from the start of all my videos. He is a patron, and he's my neighbor. He lives a couple doors down from me, and he approached me about doing a special off-road style build for a Secret Santa that he had at his place of employment. And I thought it was a fun challenge. I happen to have this Jeep, which you're seeing a stock image of, in my collection. So enough test pattern, let's get to the breakdown. First, as I mentioned, he wanted to do an off-road themed build. He wanted it weathered with lots of dust and dirt like it had been on the trail. Personally, I had just got a set of AK Interactive's Intense paint colors, and I wanted to try that out. I also got one of AK Interactive's off-road weathering effects sets, and I wanted to try that out as well. So I challenged myself to use only those two sets as my primary sources of detailing and weathering. And again, to get this all done in time for Christmas. Fortunately, I don't have to rely on the U.S. Postal Service to get things 2 houses down from me, so that wasn't going to be a problem. Okay, ready? Punch that subscribe button. Let's boogie. Now, when I shot the intro to this video, I thought it was going to be a Christmas quickie, and once I got it apart, I began to realize that might be a slight problem. This has a very interesting way of going together. Most of it comes up through the bottom of the chassis, and I thought it wouldn't be much trouble, but we'll get to that in a minute. Because this is a new Jeep, I didn't want to go too hard on the weathering or rusting, but I did give it a few dents and dings, like it had hit a few things or had some stuff falling on it during its travels. While this was intended to be a quick build with no real custom wheels or 3D printing, I did have to replace the nub wheel with one of my 3D printed wheels, and I think it adds a lot to the overall detailing. I did like that this dashboard section folds away. It made detailing the interior a lot easier. Okay, time to get painting. A lot of my favorite vendors had some killer Black Friday deals, and AK Interactive was no exception. One of the sets that I picked up was this Intense color set using their new 3rd generation acrylics, and I just had to see what the fuss was about with their new 3rd gens. And a lot of my paints are more for weathering and faded effects, so I thought it would be good to round out my collection with some bold hues, and these certainly fit the bill. I wanted to do blue for the body of the Jeep, which was pretty straightforward. There was a little masking that had to be done with the plastic windshield, but that wasn't that bad. And I thought a tan interior would look nice with the blue. I used craft paint in a pavement color to darken up the roll bar area and the roof rack, and then I would just paint detailing on top of that. The wheels were already silver, but if you're gonna paint part of the car, why not paint the whole thing? So I went over them with oily steel to give them a more tarnished look. This is a Vallejo paint, by the way. I wanted there to be some definition on the interior, so I went around the exterior of the Jeep with some grimy black paint to mimic black plastic or black vinyl and offer a little separation between the tan and the blue. I used grimy black on the plastic bumpers, the spare tire cover, and the fender flares, because I think that does a good job of imitating that almost black that you get from black plastic. Time to make use of the rest of the Intense colors. I like a green cooler. I own a green cooler, so when I see a cooler, I paint it green. These paints laid really well. They went on relatively smoothly. Sometimes I had to go back and touch them up, but it did flow very nicely, certainly better than budget craft paint. I like how the pigments worked on these. Red was the only one that was a bit tricky. It really had to be mixed well, and that's kind of been my experience with most red paint, is it doesn't mix nearly as well. You can see some fade through as the pigments kind of shifted around in whatever medium they use on these 3rd gen paints. Yellow went really well. Green was great to work with. Orange, I think, was the best one to work with. And I decided to break things up a little bit with a Wraith's Bone colored lid to imitate a faded white, and a few metal details on the winch and other things that were not quite identifiable in the roof rack.
I'm doing some green paint instead.
Let's use some green paint instead. Here's some green paint.
And some blue paint just instead.
It was at this point that the bright colors of the new intense paints drew the attention of my littlest helper, and she came by to investigate. So I made some space on my work paper and let her decorate a little bit. She was a big fan of the bright colors and loved mixing them together.
There we go.
It was at this point that I remembered I hadn't used purple yet, so I decided to remedy that after she was done redecorating my work area.
Papa, what colors do we have?
But the colors were very bright and cheerful, and I think you can see as they blended together, it was a very bright and bold way to decorate my workstation. The white balance on my camera suffered for the rest of the video, but it was worth it. Once I had been reminded that I hadn't used purple yet, I added purple to the ratchet straps on the red roll, and that rounded things out. As you know, I like to use as many different colors as possible on the various accessories in my vehicles to make them stand out. This is burnt iron paint. It doesn't really show up here, but it has this really nice metallic finish. I added a little detailing to the chassis while I had the brush wet. This is tarnished steel being applied to detail a few things. There wasn't a lot on the chassis, so I just gave it some simple detailing, and a lot of it I knew was going to get covered up anyway. At this point, I remember there were also rubber bumpers and clips on the hood, so made sure to fill those in and get the door handles. I decided to leave the hinges body color because that would be what they'd be on a stock Jeep. I used Tamiya dark brown panel liner on the tan. I like using brown panel liner on tan and brown interiors, and makes it a little more subtle. And some Nuln oil on the roof rack. I did some Nuln oil around the front too, and then just dabbed everything clean with a cotton swab. I will say I did go over this off camera with some Varthane semi-gloss polyurethane. I was pretty nervous that it was going to peel because the last time I used rattle can clear coat, it did crinkle the paint really badly, so I didn't record it. But it was just a simple rattle can clear coat. And because it's a semi-gloss, I think it did a good job of creating a scale level of shine. I think going with a straight clear coat on this body would have been too much. It would have been too shiny, but I wanted it to look like a stock paint job. And I think the farther back you get, the less reflection you pick up. So on a small scale like 1/64, it's helpful to have a little bit less sheen than a full gloss. Once I had all the major painting done, it was time to bust out the mirror paint from Culture Hustle that I love and add some chrome details on cooler and whatever this is. I assumed it was some kind of boombox, so I decided to make those like chrome speaker grills. And this really long thing, which I assume to be some kind of CB antenna. It looks like it has a CB antenna. It has kind of a spring on the back. It's either that or a fishing rod. And then to dull everything down on the underside with some dark brown panel liner, and then go around the wheels with the same. And once the mirror paint had dried on the headlights, it's time to add a little Wraith's Bone. I don't know if this is going to fully replace my oyster white that I enjoyed working with, but for stuff that needs to look dirty, I'm happy with it over using a straight white. This Tester's acrylic turn signal amber and stoplight red. Really enjoying these. The more I...
Can I have the yellow paint, please, Papa?
Oh, had somebody want to borrow some paint. But the more I work with them, the...
Papa, do we have any yellow paint? Do we?
And the acrylic means that it's not quite as bold as the enamel, and I do like that for a smaller scale like 1/64.
But we can make yellow paint.
And then it was time to break out a product from one of my favorite builders. This is Chris at SK75 Works' military insignia decal pack, and I love it. I've been itching to try it out, and this Jeep just seemed like it was screaming for it. So I grabbed these insignia stripes and dabbed them on. His decals are really nice. He has a really nice white toner mix. With his decals, he separates the white layer from the color layer, so you have to put on a white layer first, let it dry, and then put on the color layer, which can be a little tricky. If it's not fully dry, you can accidentally reactivate the bottom layer, and then you're trying to stack two decals on top of each other, but that was operator error on my part. He included some SK75 insignia decals, and I decided to give a little shout out to him on the roof rack. Once the white was dry, I decided to use some of the smaller decals. I used the white roundel from a larger decal and put one of the smaller old US Air Force logos inside the middle to make it stand out more, because I was worried that the dark blue of the insignia would blend in too much on the black spare tire cover. On the doors, they lined up perfectly though, and I was very pleased with how they turned out. Okay, time for the earth effects. This is a set that I also got on Black Friday that I was very excited to try out. It includes a stirred earth spatter effect, a dark earth pigment, and Europe earth pigment. So let's see what kind of weathering I can do using only these 3 bottles. Here we go. I started with the spattered earth. I just kind of laid on spots of it and then went over those spots with a stippling brush to break it up and make things look more splattered. I went over areas that would have more mud kicked up on them more heavily, and then stippled, and then let that dry a little bit, and then went over it again to lay on a second layer and stippled again so that I could taper back and make things look more naturally slung on the side of the Jeep and remove almost as much paint as I put on, really, to kind of complete that look. I left out the snap together of the body, by the way, because there was no snap together of this thing. It was a brutal hour-long process of trying to get everything to lay together. I don't know why it wouldn't go back together nicely, but I just could not get this thing to lay back together. I don't know if my rivets were drilled off or what, but I was so angry at that scene that I just left it out entirely. So we're just going to move on and pretend everything went perfectly smoothly. Now this is the darker pigment, which I applied to everything in the roof rack that wouldn't have had as much mud slung right up on it. And again, this is more of a stylistic choice than a reality choice, because if you know anything about vehicles that have gone mudding or gone off trail, the mud and stuff really does get everywhere. But that doesn't look very good in a small scale. It looks like you just drowned something in mud. So I used some restraint on this mud effect and decided to have more of a dusty look on top and a muddy look on the bottom. And once the brown had been applied, I went over it with the light earth pigments, and I was really happy with the way the two blended together. It created a very nice texture, so it didn't look just like a particular single color powder had been applied over it. I did some dry brushing across the hood as well with the splatter effects to make it look more like mud had run up the hood as the Jeep was running at speed. Of course, once you dab everything with dust, all those nooks and crannies that you worked so hard to panel line have now become filled with dust. So you have to go over them again with panel liner. Maybe next time I will just leave the panel liner off until the end. Also, applying the panel liner this way adds a nice bit of depth to the textures and pigments that are already on top, as it kind of soaks into the pigments that are around the panel lines and gives that texture a nice bit of depth. And there it is. Time to put the final sticker on, give it its number designation, and get it ready for its final photo shoot. So before we get to that, let's take a look at what we started with. This is a premium Matchbox from their Globe Travelers series. Not really too keen on the tampos, but it did have some really nice wheels and rubber tires. And here's where we ended up. A tried but trusty Jeep Wrangler, fresh off the trail, and definitely in need of a bath. This one was a lot of fun. It was a huge challenge, but I really appreciated Jonathan hiring me for this. I haven't had a chance to catch up with him since I recovered from COVID, so I don't know how the vehicle was received, but I'm trusting it went well. I was certainly happy with it. So let me know what you think. Have you done any mud splattered or off-road effect builds? And if you have, let me know what techniques you like to use to make your vehicles look trail worn and dusty. As you saw at the beginning of the video, and as I've referenced several times throughout this build, I have patrons that are absolutely critical to this channel continuing to operate as I'm steering into making this my full-time project, and Johnny is one of them. I'm so grateful for him and all the Bandit level patrons at the beginning of the video, but I also want to thank Mid-Island Customs Diecast at the Rockford level. Thank you, Evan. I really appreciate it. My incredible and fantastic wife, Carolyn, who is building her own business as a math tutor, and my newest Rockford level patron, Maple Leaf Matchbox Matchbox Makeovers. He does a lot of amazing work and does it all for charity. It's an incredible project. You should definitely check out his channel. I would also like to thank my Douglas level patrons, the Good, Bad, Better podcast, Jordan Kleinhenn, the Curtis Crafts YouTube channel, Jim Silva YouTube channel, and Devil's Details Diecast YouTube channel. Thank you all. You're amazing. Please check out everybody's links in the description below and give them a subscribe or a follow or whatever it is that they do. And please tell them I sent you. As you've seen this season, I'm doing a lot of commissions. And if you'd like to buy a previous build that wasn't a commission, check out my previous videos or order something custom for yourself by emailing flyingvaliant@gmail.com. If you really, really like the channel, you can pick up some Flying Valiant merch over at our TeePublic store that's run by my brother Justin. You can check out his amazing designs and pick up some Flying Valiant stuff. That all goes back to him as a thank you for providing graphics to this channel. And if you really want to go above and beyond liking and subscribing these videos, you can join the Flying Valiant racing team over at my Patreon. You can get to it at flyingvaliant.com or by clicking the link in the description below. My patrons get exclusive access to me as a consultant. They get behind-the-scenes footage and sneak peeks at videos before they happen, and they also get entries in a monthly giveaway where I give away everything from Flying Valiant merch to full-built custom commissions. So if you want to know more about that, visit flyingvaliant.com. And of course, you can always get more glamour shots of my builds and see a little bit behind the curtain of what I do at Flying Valiant on Facebook and Instagram. Speaking of commissions, I've got a lot coming up, so be sure to subscribe, click the bell, and see what other folks have got me building. As always, I want to thank you for coming along with me for the ride. So until next time, stay fresh, cheese bags.